Yes, welcome back to another edition of Completed It, Mate, with myself, Kutski, where I go back and complete some of the games from my childhood, see if I've still got what it takes to power my way through it. This one, I actually haven't really played much. Definitely didn't play it much back in the day. Michael Jacksons Moonwalker, the arcade game that I'm playing here at the moment. I'm very familiar with the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis version of this game, to be honest. Told this story a few times in the past, how I grew up with home computers, the Amiga, the Atari ST. In the UK, that's what we were all about in the mid to late 80s when I was just, being old enough to fall in love with video games. My dad was super into gaming, so I was lucky in that way. He always had the latest and greatest games with it that I got to play. And I remember feeling really offended when one day he sold, I think it was the Amiga that he had at the time, sold it, got rid of all the games, and he came back with a Sega Mega Drive, which to me was a little bit like, it was just this tiny little black box, and the only game that he got for it was the pack-in game, Michael Jacksons Moonwalker. I can't actually remember what my first impressions of it were. I think I was just more impressed the fact that it had like computer game versions of music that I knew. It was a lot more simpler than this one. You didn't get have all the comic book cutscenes that you can see there, and it was 2D, but it was the same sort of principle for the game where you obviously play as Michael Jackson. You go around, you kill bad guys, and collect little children, which obviously didn't age so well, did it? But yeah, moving swiftly on from that, and then you can kind of collect power-ups, you can turn into the big robot. It's been so long since I've seen Moonwalker the film, I can't even remember what the plot was, to be honest. But he turns into a big robot at some point, doesn't he? And there's gangster people chasing him. So yeah, same theme to the game, but this one plays in an isometric view. This was something that was in the Mega Drive version as well, when you could like use the power-up to do a dance. You used a chunk of your health to get it. That was always the cool part of the game, wasn't it? So yeah, a lot of it stayed intact, to be honest. It was just, I guess they couldn't do the isometric thing, the pseudo 3D on the Mega Drive early on, because Moonwalker was actually a really early release on it. And I remember the first time that I saw this arcade, I can't even remember where we were going. We were on a family trip somewhere, and we pulled over at a service station. I remember hearing the music and going over and thinking, oh, it's the arcade version of Moonwalk, the game that I had at home. I went over and saw it was in like 3D, what I thought at the time. I remember being proper blown away, but there was a big crowd of kids around it, so there was no chance that I was going to get a go on it. And then, we had to move on, get back on the road. So yeah, I think that was the only time that I ever saw it in an arcade, and I never actually got to play it. But now, thanks to the wonders of MAME and every arcade game from my youth now being available to me, thought we'd play through it and just see what the game's about. I believe it's not that long a game, so we shouldn't be too long on here. But it's cool, it's fun, it's not deep. Again, it's very much rooted in taking your money off you, isn't it? Which you'd expect being an arcade game. It's funny because I love arcade culture, I love arcade games. I hate microtransactions, but when arcade games just like the original microtransactions, technically. Speaking of stealing your money off you, that would have been another 20p out of my pocket. That's what it would have been, I guess, back then. When did this come out? It was late 80s, I think, in the arcades. I remember Mad Dog McCree when that came out. That was like £1 a go because it had, video graphics and stuff like that. It was too rich for my tastes. I'd never play that. The middle games, when you got a big cabinet to play on, were about 50p a pop around this era, I think. So yeah, you couldn't have charged more than 20p a go. But yeah, it's a good game, this. I like it. It's enjoyable. Like I said, it's nothing to set the world on fire. But if they release this on the modern consoles, I'd definitely pick it up. But I don't think they'll ever be able to because the music licensing. There was 2 different versions of Moonwalker for the Mega Drive, wasn't there? One of them they had to take the Thriller theme out of it, I think. I remember when I was looking at the old ROMs. That's the big robot dude that I was on about. Shoots laser beams. But yeah, I think very much the appeal of this to bring people in would have been the music blaring out the cabinet and the Michael Jackson theme in the 80s. It's weird when you think about the arcade games that had a license on them. People did put a lot more effort into the arcade games, didn't they, than the home ports, because it's like when you were buying a console game, if it was based on a movie license, you could pretty much guarantee it was just going to be phoned in. All the money got spent on paying for the license, not the actual development of the game. But arcade games seem to be a little bit better. I'm trying to think of any really good standout games. I think the Lion King game and Aladdin were decent, weren't they, on the home consoles and stuff. Like I said, the Moonwalker game was alright, wasn't it? But I think the arcade games were always better. Like you look at the Simpsons arcade game and the Turtles arcade game. They were like the standouts, weren't they? Interesting how much artistic license people had on these games, because like I said, it's been a long time since I've watched Moonwalker. Don't remember any of this. in the film, to be honest. I mean, it could well be there, to be honest, but yeah, there we go. Level 3 down. Not sure how many levels there are. I think it's like 5 or 6 in this or something. And I do really like the music in the game. I've always liked chiptune. I like just listening to chiptune versions of any song. It's just always, I don't know, maybe just growing up with video games and that era. I've got a really clear memory once of sitting there with my mum and dad's tape recorder next to the TV, going through the sound test menu on eSWAT for the Mega Drive, because I loved the music on that, and recording everything out of the sound test so I could listen to it on my Walkman on the go. I haven't been keeping track of how many continues I've used. I should have started from the beginning and just put like 99 credits in it, and then I could have worked out how much would have gone through it. But I always say it's like I absolutely love video games. I've played them all my life and I've never been good at them, and I'm getting worse as time goes on. So if you're looking for like an expert playthrough or something with any of my games, you're not going to find it here. But graphics are pretty decent as well, aren't they, for the era? It's got a nice aesthetic to it. Isometric, you didn't really see that many games that had this viewpoint, did they? They were more like, you know, like your Final Fight, Streets of Rage brawlers, or the 2D side scrollers. I don't really remember that many isometric games like this, so it does kind of stand out, and I think it's lasted the test of time. It is kind of making me want to go back and watch the original film again now. Because like I was saying earlier, it's like I can't remember anything about it at all. And I remember it being quite trippy and weird. And it's one of them, I've no idea that, you know, if you're watching that as a child and being a bit like, this is kind of weird, must be a bit mad going back watching it now. No one ever really talks about his films, do they? It's like, still now, obviously his music's just going to be embedded in pop culture forever, but at the time, I remember the films being a big deal. It was almost like the next chapter. Obviously, like pre-internet and being a child, you know, your perception of the world, not necessarily the most accurate, but I always thought that it was like his movies were just as big as his music, but no one ever really talks about them, do they? Not on Netflix, I'm guessing. I wonder how much involvement Michael Jackson actually had in the games, because he was kind of into them, wasn't he? He was really into video games. Because the rumour was always it was Sonic 3, wasn't it? And people were always saying that he was involved in the soundtrack for that. And I remember watching a YouTube documentary on it recently, and people have gone through and like analysed little production techniques and, you know, musical techniques that were in the soundtrack of Sonic 3. But that was around the time that all these scandals were breaking out, wasn't it? So I think that they just didn't really want that association tagged to the game. But then I did see that there was interviews with one of Michael Jackson's co-producers, because obviously he didn't sit there and write all the music himself, did he? He was working with a lot of different composers and producers, and I think it might have been one of them that was actually working on the game. So obviously if he worked on it, then you'd hear the influence from Michael Jackson's music in it. So I don't know, it's fascinating though, but if you listen to the music from Sonic 3, definitely does have that like Michael Jackson sound. But as far as his involvement in this, it was probably, I don't know, like an agent deciding that they were going to do a game, Michael Jackson agreeing to it, and maybe when it was finished, he goes and has a little go of it and goes, that's cool, I'm going to put it out, probably, yeah. Can't imagine that there would have been much more involvement than that. I wonder how many people actually sat and played through this game all the way through in the arcades. Because it's not super difficult, like I said, it's like I'm not great at games and it's not costing me a fortune, is it, to plough my way through this, even if it was real money that we were using. But to be honest, it's kind of like a little bit repetitive and boring, isn't it? At what point would people have just gone, Guess it's people that just wanted to see what was next. You can guarantee the last boss is going to be like a super grind, isn't it? Like a lot of games were like that back in the day, where they'd be pretty easy all the way through it, or not super difficult, and then you get to the last boss and it'd just like rinse your money over and over again. But you know that you kind of, if you give up on the final boss and then you decide that you want to have a go at beating it the next week, that you're going to have to pump in all of that money right from the beginning again. So it's kind of like, oh, I've got this far, maybe just another go, I've invested all this now, so I've got to see it through to the end. So yeah, I think that was what a lot of games did, didn't they? It's like manageable up until the last boss. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say. In for 20p, in for 20 quid. Really could do with a bit of variety in the game, to be honest. I was thinking, what was I talking about all the way through when I was doing the Golden Axe review? But on that, there was stuff going on all the time that you could see, whereas with this, it's like, well, it's quite clearly, it's like, well, just keep doing the blue smash on this enemy, pick up the kid, keep doing the blue smash on the next enemy, pick up the kid, turn into the robot, and beat the boss. Not really a lot to commentate on, is there? I guess this is why not all arcade games made it to home console ports, really, wasn't it? Because it's not so much of an investment to look at a nice cabinet with cool music on it and cool graphics, stick your 20p, 50p, whatever you want to pay into it, have a little go of it, and then go, You know, whereas if you're getting a game at home, you want it to have a little bit more substance, don't you? That dude looks more like the guy off RoboCop. What was his name? Clarence. I'm vaguely remembering that there was somebody that resembled him, like a very similar character in Moonwalker, maybe. RoboCop's another one that I want to do the arcade game of, because I remember seeing the arcade game, but I only ever played the I think it was the Amiga version of it, which I did really like, but it was pretty difficult. But my mate had a cracked copy of it with a cheat code in it, so you could play it all the way through. Okay, right, now we find out, did they get the license to use Thriller in this, because it's the graveyard level. Let's find out. Alright, no, I thought the music was going to change. No, obviously not. Right, okay, yeah, so they didn't get the license for the Thriller. Also, wasn't the first level on the game kind of like a graveyard, outdoory thing? Or is it all just blurring into one at this point? Music is really nice on this game, though. Like I said, it's not like full-on 8-bit chiptune, like the stereotypical chiptune sound that people go for. It does sound like the Sega Mega Drive version of it. I don't even know who actually made the game, because it was exclusive to Sega consoles when it made its way home, but I didn't notice at the start who did the arcade version of it. There goes another 20p. Yeah, I think this game's a great argument for game preservation as well, really, because it's like if I can, I'll always try and buy, if there's any retro re-releases of old games and stuff like that, it's like I love it when people bring stuff out, so I always try and buy them just to support them, basically, if it's coming out. With this, obviously I'm playing on MAME. This will never get re-released again. I can't see how this would ever get re-released again. Like I said earlier, because the music licensing and the franchise licensing and stuff like that, games like this would kind of be lost to time because there was no direct home port of this version. So the Mega Drive version was different. Games like this would kind of be lost to time, wouldn't they? Definitely don't remember that dude in the helicopter. I really have got to go back and watch the film now, because I want to see if any of this makes any kind of reference to the film or follows any kind of theme. I mean, it could have probably been a sprite swap, like a game that was in development and it's like 90% done, and they're like, oh, we've just won the franchise to do a Michael Jackson Moonwalker game, and they're like, cool, is there a walking spider robot in it? No, okay, let's just do it anyway because we'll complain. That did happen a lot back in the day. Still seems weird though, doesn't it, having a Michael Jackson Moonwalker game based in a graveyard and no Thriller. I wonder what the score with that was. Was it because Thriller was older than a lot of the stuff that's in? I'm no Michael Jackson expert, so you'll have to forgive me if you've stumbled across this video from being a huge fan or something, but wasn't a lot of the soundtrack in this game, there goes another 20p, wasn't the soundtrack on this game, a lot of it was from Bad, that era, and Thriller was an album earlier, so maybe it was like a different record label or something, so on the licensing deal. It's the problem with using licensed music or licensed anything in games, really, isn't it? Like the amount of times that you see games that are like 10 years old having to be patched or just pulled off download stores because they've done a 10-year license deal for the soundtrack, and then the license expires and then they've either got to strip the soundtrack out of the game that you've already bought, or just pull it down off stores so people can't buy it anymore because the investment that it would take to reprogram the game to take the soundtrack out of it, it's just not worth their efforts. They're just like, screw it, just pull the game down, it's not earning anymore anyway. And like I said, it's not even just the soundtracks to games, it's licensing. One of my favourite games of all time is Outrun 2. Can't buy it anywhere now because they used the Ferrari license for the cars, and then after 10 years the Ferrari license expired, and because it's an old game, Ferrari probably want loads of money for it, and they're just like, it's just not worth paying the license, so pull it down off all the stores, and I literally don't have any way to play it at the moment. The only way that I can play Outrun 2 at the moment is on my PSP, because I've got a disc copy of it on that. A lot of my retro gaming I do on... is that dude stuck in the corner there? I should have just left him there and wellied him for a bit more. All my retro gaming I tend to just do it on a Raspberry Pi, and I've got a Pi 3B at the moment, so it's not really powerful enough to do those 3D arcade racing games. So for stuff like this, it's perfect, but yeah, trying to get a Steam Deck whenever finally my number comes up on that, because I think that'll be the perfect way to play like retro arcade games of, you know, generations past the pixel art stuff.
I love you, Michael.
Whoa, who was that? That was creepy. I guess, is this the... Can't be the last boss already, is it? How long we've been playing for? About 15 minutes. You gotta love out the way when you do the special, when he's the robot, he just turns back into Michael for a little bit and then disappears and comes back as the robot again. I want to see the robot dance. What do you think the perfect length for an arcade game is? It's probably the 20-minute mark, isn't it? I reckon. Like, you don't want it too short, because if people play a game for 10-15 minutes and manage to finish it, then they're probably not going to come back and play it again. But at the same time, if you make a game an hour long, people are just going to get bored, aren't they? So you've got to make it achievable to be able to beat. I think most of the classics are about 15-20 minutes long, aren't they? Is this the same dude that's the boss on each level? He's just coming back with a different robot every time. Gotta admit, not really paying the most amount of attention. Just, this is the problem when you play in games with unlimited credits, isn't it? You can just grind your way through it and there's just like no focus and no penalty. I should really set myself a limit and see if I could actually do it on a budget. Right, okay, so that's round 4, stage 3. Is that it? Oh. The Evil Fortress. This has got to be the last level, hasn't it? The cutscenes are pretty good, aren't they? For the era, for the time. They still look cool now, like stylised. Again, I've got a feeling that we saw this level already. Are they just recycling the later levels? Or, you know, is there some narrative way that, you know, you've gone back here again or something? Oh, I meant to say as well, if you've got any suggestions of any games that you'd like to see me play through to revisit, then please let me know in the comments, because at the moment I'm just literally just pulling random games out. I was just scrolling through the list and I was going, oh, Michael Jacksons Moonwalker, and I was going to do the Mega Drive one, and then I remembered that I don't think I've ever finished it and I don't know any cheat codes for it, and I thought, well, maybe the arcade game we could play through, because I always wondered what that was like. Like I said, you know, never really had the opportunity to play it a lot back in the day, so I think I've had a quick look at it in the past, this one, but I've never played this deep into it before. But if you've got any ones that you'd like to see me play through, then yeah, please let me know. I've been meaning to churn these out a little bit more quick, because they don't take the most amount of effort really. I just have to ramble and play a game for a little bit. And when I put the first one up, I didn't think anyone would be interested in it, but it did quite well, so I've been meaning to do another one quicker, but I've probably lost the momentum now. But anyway, yeah, they're nice little fun videos to put together at the end of the day when I'm unwinding a little bit. Like I was saying earlier, I've kind of got the itch to play more of the later 3D arcade games, like the random games that I used to love when I was younger. One of them being 18-Wheel American Pro Trucker. I absolutely loved that game. It was during Sega's era of doing crazy arcade games, like when they'd take really boring, mundane tasks like being a taxi driver or going fishing, and they'd create these like wild, high-paced arcade games out of them. And 18-Wheel American Trucker is one of the most overlooked ones, where you just basically, like, it's kind of self-explanatory, isn't it? You drive a big truck across America, where you've got time limits, other rivals to do it, and it feels really heavy and clunky, but it's also presented in a really arcadey way, and I always just loved that game. But like I said, that's a little bit beyond what my Raspberry Pi's capable of, so I'm thinking once I get that Steam Deck, I always want to say Stream Deck, Steam Deck, then yeah, we'll be able to cover a lot of stuff like that. It'd be cool. What were they? Sega Model 2 arcade boards, I think. The Naomi board was it, that was like the arcade version of the Dreamcast. Okay, here's your token elevator stage. Every beat 'em up by law has to have like an elevator stage, doesn't it? Would you class this as a beat 'em up? Kind of is, isn't it? Like if you just took that blue thing away and made it his fist. And there's guys running around with the knives. Yeah, it's like isometric final fight, sort of. I'm well aware that I'm just rambling now before we get to the end of the game. It's mad how hard it is to talk about something when there's not really that much eventful going on. A lot of people take the piss out of, you know, like really big streamers, and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe that they get paid so much money for playing video games and talking over them. It's more difficult than you'd think. I thought this would be like the easy one to do, but you know, writing your thoughts down about a video game and like recording a script and editing together a review. It's not as difficult as it is to just ramble, especially, you know, people that do it live, so no opportunity to go over it again. Final boss has got to be up here though, hasn't he? You know, the token elevator stage comes before usually a corridor in the mansion, and then the final battle is Bubbles. He's gonna sort me out. Robot Michael. Is it worth making a joke about that enemy's attack, or are we just gonna let that one be? Let's leave that one alone. Oh, he's his mate as well, with a mini one. See if they'll dance. Let's see if they'll dance. Right, okay, come on. This has got to be it. This has got to be it. Hell, how tall is this building? Right, come on. Come on, come on. So I was kind of right, this is kind of like the corridor, isn't it? The corridor that leads you to the final boss battle. Let's see if I can cheese him. I'm sure there is like a way to get good at the game, but for me, I mean, again, this is the problem with playing it on free play effectively, is you don't learn any of the strategies or any of the rhythms or, you know, the ways that you're supposed to beat a boss. You just sit there and keep pressing continue every time you die and stand in front of them and shoot them. Is that it? Is he gone? Is he dead? Oh, I'm an aeroplane now. That was pretty cool. I'd be happy with that as an ending. Little cutscene. And is this going to be the credits now, I'm guessing? Here we go. Mr. Big's evil plot has been foiled with the destruction of his deadly doomsday weapon, the gigantic laser cannon. Did you notice any story at the start? I just think it just dropped us into the game. Maybe this is the story of Moonwalker, the film. So there we go. Yeah, thanks for sticking around till the end. This one went on a little bit, didn't it? I'll try and pick a more interesting game. But again, this was just a game that I wanted to play through, so I guess that's kind of what this series is about, isn't it? But if you do have any games that you'd like me to cover on this series, then please do let me know in the comments, subscribe, like the video and all of that good stuff. I'm probably talking to like 3 people at the moment that have made it to the end of the video. So if you've made it to the end of the video, type bananas and then I'll know. Just so if I see a random comment saying bananas, I'll know, well, at least one person made it to the end. Interesting then with the credits, it was giving credits to the individual people that did the chiptune versions of the songs. Oh, and there we go. Game concept and design by Michael Jackson, so maybe he was quite hands-on with this. Cool, right, I think I've done more than enough rambling. I'll wrap this one up now. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Kutski signing out, keeping the games alive.